Now, what about picking a song for Eurovision, Björn?
We had two songs to choose between. Another one which appeared on the album, Waterloo album, called Hasta Mañana, which was much more, the average mainstream European Schlager thing, or European Eurovision thing. In the end, we decided to do Waterloo because it was more fun to perform. That was the reason, really. It was more fun to perform that. So we did it. So it wasn't really that well thought out as it might seem to someone now. I remember very well being on Top of the Pops the first time, because that was 2 days after this, on the 8th of April, 74, and we were taken from Brighton in a Rolls Royce. Never been in a Rolls Royce before in my life. And we got up to the BBC studio and found that we had to record the whole thing with the BBC orchestra, which they had at that time. And we only had an hour or something to do it, so it was very, very stressful, but at the same time, great fun, because after all, being on Top of the Pops had been our dream for a long, long time.
What
To do, in those days at least, I don't know what it's like today, but in those days, to do Top of the Pops at the right moment, when you have the single shooting up the start shots at the right moment, could make it number one or not.
So, Björn, what about the Abba wannabes?
The Steps and those people are not the first ones. I mean, there was Brotherhood of Man, who thought that they had to have a Spanish name for every title. I guess that was after Fernando. And yes, I'm flattered by that.
Telling the lot. What about those clothes, Björn?
I'll tell you, at first period between the 74 and 75, there was nothing that I wouldn't wear. I mean, the costumes we had in Waterloo is nothing compared with what we had just after that. I remember one thing, that some kind of a leotard, blue leotard with sequins and a cape, like Superman kind of thing. Oh my God, when I see pictures from that time, I can't believe it. But we just wanted to be outrageous. Like that a group like the Sex Pistols should be inspired by Abba. That's very, very odd. Then again, our fellow musicians always respected us much more than the critics did in the early days. We had, people like Led Zeppelin and people you wouldn't expect to like Abba, who really liked us. And one of the most flattering things I've heard in my life was I was in New York about 2 years ago, and I ran into Pete Townsend, and he says, "Do you know s.o.s. is the best pop song ever written?" I was so proud.
I don't want to talk.
Or later, a hit game show, of course, for Jimmy Tarbuck. Next, Super Trooper, and they don't say Tesco, they say Glasgow. Here's Björn.
Glasgow is in the song for two reasons. The rhyme, also our last tour, before we wrote Super Trooper, actually we went to Glasgow to play Glasgow a day before we played Dublin, and I remember that very vividly. And I must have felt lonely in Glasgow, I suppose. Working on a musical is very much working together with other people, especially when you're writing it. I remember with chess, we sat with Tim for days and days and discussed where would he go from there and what would happen now. He's the main book writer, but Benny and I were very much involved all the time. So it comes down to, you need a song there, but that song has got to take you from that A to B. So the song has to achieve that, otherwise it's wasted. I think in a musical, the ideal is when songs carry the story forward, instead of stopping the show, which is a mistake that a lot of people make.
show up. Björn now talks about those videos.
Very early on, we realized we had, people wanted us to go everywhere to do television. And that including Australian and American far-off places. And Jez and I had, a little daughter. We didn't want to travel. Neither of us did. So the idea came up, why don't we actually produce something really, really good for television and just send it out and see if they play it. And the first ones we did was s.o.s again and Mamma Mia and a few others. And we sent them down to Australia, for instance, and they played them like mad and made them gigantic hits. So from then on, I always thought that we actually started the video thing, but someone said the other day that no, you didn't. The Beatles had done that before, and others too. But we certainly started, making a video of each song we recorded and sending it out. But it was just lazy. We didn't want to travel. You can write anything that comes up in your mind, really. Of course, when it's a sad song and you know that Agneta or Frida is going to sing it, I suppose you start thinking maybe in there as them. And funnily enough, I mean, the lyrics I wrote for the girls, they hardly ever complained about anything, saying that I can't take this into my mouth. That hardly ever happened.